everybody, and welcome back to my monthly video tutorial series. This month I am going to be talking about resin. I know that this is a subject that a lot of people have a lot of questions about. It can seem really intimidating if you've never worked with it before and you don't have a firm understanding of the products and the things that you need and how everything works. So hopefully this will give you at least enough information to get you started on how to select your resin, how to find molds, what to do once you have your molds, and what to do with your pieces once you have finished curing them in resin. So let's jump right in. Now, to work with resin, the materials that you are going to need are, first and foremost, resin. There's a number of different companies that sell resin. There's a number of different places that you can get it at. I love to go to Reynolds Advanced Materials. They do have a website where they sell their resin, I assume all over the world, but definitely within the country. You also have the option of getting amazing brand resin from your local craft store. I have gotten it at Michael's, I've gotten it at Hobby Lobby. There are some Joann's that sell it, but pretty much any craft or hobby store should have at least one of these. Now, what I have here are two different types of resin. This is normal standard resin. It cures opaque, which means that you cannot see through it. And generally these come in white. Reynolds has a couple, I think, that cure to different colors, and you can tint them different colors, but generally it will cure solid white. And then I have here, let's see here, this is clear casting resin, which means that when this cures, you will be able to see through it. So depending on the project that you are doing, you will want to decide between clear resin or opaque resin. And I am going to show you both of them today. They both have their different uses, different benefits and drawbacks. You are going to need a mold. Now, I have two different types of molds here today. This is a plastic mold. I bought this off of eBay. You can get all kinds of different shapes off of eBay or Amazon. And it generally will say in the listing whether it's a plastic mold or a rubber or silicone mold. And this is a silicone rubber mold. And this is one that I made myself. So I sculpted a bunch of different shapes and then I molded it in silicone rubber, which is going to be the subject of a whole other video. So look forward to that. If you are using a plastic mold such as this, you do not have to worry about this if you are using a rubber mold. But if you are using a plastic mold, you are going to want some form of mold release. And basically what this does is it creates a little barrier between the resin and the plastic so that the resin doesn't cure to the plastic and you're able to pop it out. Because the resin does heat up and resin does stick to itself, and resin is a plastic. If you pour it straight into this, there is a very good chance that you're never ever going to get it out, and you're never ever going to be able to use this mold again. So get a mold release. You are also going to need some form of measuring cup. If you want at least two. I generally use 3 because resin comes normally in 2 parts. I like to measure out part A, part part B, and then pour them both into this, so that I'm not, the resin isn't curing in one of the cups, and thus making it difficult to measure out. Again, I like to reuse my cups. Long story short. You are also going to need popsicle sticks or some kind of firm stirrer to mix the resin, because resin has to be 100% fully mixed in order for it to cure properly. And for later, you are going to need sandpaper. If you are working with clear resin, you are going to want some form of sandpaper that works for wet sanding. If you are using just normal opaque resin, you can use pretty much any form of sandpaper, but I really recommend, if you're going to be doing a lot of resin work, that you invest in a Dremel, because that will save your life. So I believe the clear takes longer, so I'm going to start with that. Your resin will come in 2 bottles. They should both be clear. If your resin starts to change colors like mine has here, see how it's slightly yellowish? It's normally not a super great thing, and you should just throw it away and buy more. It should work just fine for demonstrative purposes. Because, like I said, I'm working with a plastic mold, I am going to utilize my mold release agent. It says up here, shake well before using. So I'm gonna shake this guy up. It does not smell amazing, fair warning. And it kind of just smells like alcohol, I guess, like acetone. And you're just going to apply a light coating all along the sides and the bottom and everything of your mold. And just in case we end up casting 2 of these, coat this one too. And just get that all on the sides. And then you want to give it a second to dry. And that's what's going to create that nice little protective barrier for your resin. So now when you take your resin out of the bottle, you'll notice that one of them says A side and the other says B side. Generally speaking, you measure A first and then you add an equal amount of B to A and mix them together. And you do want to make sure any resin, I always check to just make quadruple sure that any resin that I buy is a ratio of 1-to-1 by volume. There are some that are by weight. There are some that are a mixed ratio of 2-to-1 or 3-to-1. It's a lot easier if you just, especially if you're starting out, if you just get 1-to-1 by volume ratio, because then you literally just have to measure out equal part A, equal part B, pour them together, stir them until they're perfectly combined. Done. So let's see. You know, to get even with the thing that you are pouring in order to get an accurate read on the measuring cup. Make sure you clean off your bottles because it gets real unpleasant to work with this stuff if you've got residue all over it. So I suppose another thing I should have listed in things that you are going to need for working with resin would have been paper towels or some kind of napkin you don't care about or cloth you don't care about or something. So I decided to bring down a third cup or an extra cup to mix in. So this is my part A. Just dump it all into my little cup here. Here's part A. Here's part B. Here's my popsicle stick. Now, depending on the cure time of your resin, you may need to do this like super fast. I've used a resin before that had a cure time of like 30 seconds or a minute or something like that. And I will probably never do that again because it was so anxiety inducing. Because you had to immediately start stirring it like the second part B touched part A. But luckily this one has a cure time of about 48 minutes. So I have plenty of time to sit here and stir and stir and stir and stir and stir and just make extra sure I'm getting everything off the sides. And now when you're working with clear resin, you really don't want to like whip this into a frenzy because I'm sure you can see already that there's like little bubbles forming in there. Many of those bubbles will pop themselves as the resin cures, but if you mix it too fast, those bubbles, you know, and there's too many bubbles, it can stay in the casting, and then you've got like an uneven bubbly casting. Now, if that's what you're going for, by all means, freaking like crazy stir away. Now, hopefully you guys have been able to see while I'm doing this that it started out really cloudy. And you could see all the swirls of the two parts together. And it's to a point now where it's looking pretty homogeneous. Trying not to like steal it away from you guys too much, but I need to make sure that it's, yeah, it looks like it's pretty well mixed. All right, so now I've got my mold here. I'm just gonna gently pour this in and let it fill that up. And now it's kind of up to you and whatever you're making, if you want to fill it all the way to the top, or you want to fill it halfway, you want like a thinner piece. And at this point, I like to give my molds a little wiggle, a little tap. Try and kind of help those bubbles get out a little bit. You can blow if you see some towards the top. All right, and from there, this guy is ready. So now it's literally just going to sit there and not be touched for about half an hour to 45 minutes, depending on how long it decides to take today. You can, if you wanted to like add glitter or something to this, you would do that a little later in the curing process. Just kind of keep an eye on it. And when you are able to like move the mold and it's not like liquid enough that it's moving, you can sprinkle glitter on and it'll stick to the back because the back will still be tacky. And then once it cures and it's clear, you'll see the glitter through the clear resin, which is pretty nifty. So this is going to move off to the side and just sit and cure. And then I'm going to pull this mold over now. And we're going to do the opaque resin. As with the clear resin, I've got a part A and a part B. And they are a 1-to-1 volume mix ratio, which, as I said, so easy. So once again, we're going to take our popsicle stick. So part A is now in the cup. And now we add part B. Oh, you can really see the difference in this one. See how like crystalline that looks almost? Look at how it's clearing up. How cool is that? Now you'll start to feel this through the cup because it will heat up as you go. Because of the chemical reaction. You can use your popsicle stick to kind of move this around, make sure it gets into all the little nooks and crannies. Ooh! Ah! It cured too fast! Oh, well, it's not going to work out, but that's okay. You see how it's turning white? It's still a little goopy. But it's starting to harden up and it's getting really hot. Like this cup is warming up a lot. That is the chemical reaction of the resin. Yep, so this guy will take about 5 minutes or so to fully cure, and you can see it's already going. And this one is still pretty liquid, so it's going to be sitting for a little while before it's ready to be touched. So I'm going to let these guys set, and I will check back in with you all once they are done curing. All right, so now that everything has had plenty of time to fully cure, and I know that because it's no longer tacky or sticking to my fingers or anything like that. Now, throughout the process, the way that I'll test these is I'll pick it up and kind of move it around a little bit, and if it's not moving, I'll find a small corner, so like in this case in the heart, and I'll just kind of tap a finger there very lightly. And if it's still tacky and sticks to my finger, then obviously it needs more time, but I touched a very small side area, so that's not going to screw it up. Or you can also, if you have space on the side of your mold, just like put a drop of the resin before you let it sit aside to sit, and then you can test that spot rather than potentially ruining your final piece. But anyway, so for these hard plastic mold pieces, you're just gonna kind of shift the mold and play with it, and then the piece should pop right out. So there's our clear piece. You can see it is see-through. Now you'll notice if you can see in the camera that it looks a little cloudy. That's the residue of the mold release on the top. And this is why you can also see there's like a little bit of raw edge on here. So this is why any resin piece that you ever do is never going to come out 100% perfect. You are going to need to sand it and finish it. Now, this one, if it were going to go in some kind of setting, I could probably just wash to get that residue off, and it would probably be fine. But I am going to sand it down. And now for clear pieces, sanding the edges generally is pretty okay if you want to just use straight sandpaper, but you really want to wet sand these, because if you sand straight on the clear, you see how I now have that little spot of rough discoloration? Like, that's not going to go anywhere because that's now gridded up the clear resin. So when you're sanding clear resin, you really, really want to do this with wet sanding. So you either run it underwater and take your sandpaper underwater and get your sandpaper nice and wet and do it that way, or you can fill a little cup with water, submerge the piece, and then put sandpaper in there and just kind of rub it along the sandpaper in the water. And if you do it with wet sanding, it doesn't scuff up the edges too much. And now taking the pieces out of the rubber molds is super duper easy. You just flex the molds and it pops right out. See, I've got that edge there and it pops right out. And now you can clearly see on this piece I've got all kinds of resin runoff there. So again, just go in with your sandpaper. If it's a thin enough layer of resin, you can actually just go in with a pair of scissors and literally just cut that bit off. A smart person would have gone for an edge that had less to sand off for a demonstration, but I'm not a smart person. There we go. Now this is where, if you have a Dremel, things would be very easy because you don't have to go around every edge and do this by hand. See that nice, clean point I've got there now. So I would just go around to each of the little points and just sand out the excess. And then a piece like this that didn't really have too much runoff, it's just a little rough along this edge, see? So I would just go in, smooth it out a bit. It just looks a lot cleaner. And that's about it for the basics of resin casting. Thank you all so much for watching my tutorial. I really, really appreciate all of the support and amazing feedback that I've been getting from this series, and I love sharing my knowledge with you all. Extra special shout out to my patrons who made all of this possible. I really, honestly, truly would not be able to do what I do without you. If you are interested in becoming a patron, please check out the link in my profile. Patrons get to see all of my videos, tutorials a month in advance, anything else at least a couple weeks in advance. And it's how I'm able to do what I do and to provide you with the content that you all look forward to. In addition, you get awesome perks like pictures of my butt and private chats and whatever else you may be interested in. So please check that out if you're interested. No pressure if you are not. I will be back next month with some other fun tutorial. If you have any suggestions of something that you would like to see, questions about the video you just watched, anything at all that I can potentially help you with, please do not hesitate to shoot me a message, leave a comment, and let me know what's up, and I will do my best to answer your questions. And have a wonderful day, and I will see you guys next month. Bye!